ladies and gentlemen here in the room, but also online, a very warm welcome. And indeed, thank you very much for asking not only how to pronounce my surname, which is always a challenge, but also doing it absolutely perfectly. I was really looking forward to today, just as I was looking forward to the entry into force of accessibility. Because for me, accessibility is a way to talk. It's a way to set up our society. It is a way to make sure that we are inclusive for everybody in our society. But it is also a way to make things more beautiful. Because we will talk not only about making things accessible, but if you include it in the design, and I stress the word design, you can also make things not only functional and beautiful. And making it accessible for everybody is essential. The way to start that is by dialogue, because you don't realize that if you don't have if everything works well and you see well, you walk well, you are mindless in getting upstairs. You're sometimes mindless in taking money out of an ATM and you don't think about that you can actually see the keypad and all the other things. And it is usually very hard. So you can look at accessibility and Accessibility Act in two ways. You can look at it as another burden on the industry, where you have to change your websites, where you have to change your entrance, where you have to change anything to make it more accessible. But that's not how I look at it. For me, it is an opportunity to enter into a dialogue and to make things really inclusive and to make things beautiful. So I'm very happy that we have this strong collaboration with the AccessibilEU Consortium and the European Blind Union, because it is by dialogues like this, and I tell you, for me, this is the start, but not on the end. It is by continuous dialogue that we see things from other viewpoints. And that is, I think, what is so important. If you see things through other people's senses, then you can include things. So I'm very happy that we're joined today in all these conversations, because that will be the conversation throughout the day in different panels, hoping to learn from each other and hoping to talk to each other. And we will be joined by representatives of the European Central Bank, the European Commission. We have Commissioner Albuquerque here, and I'm very happy with that. And Dutch National Bank presenters. And if I may stop for a second with the Dutch National Bank, I have fond memories because they organize a societal meeting on accessibility, het overleg betalingsverkeer, the system that they always organize, is able to track these things and able to include the accessibility in design already. So it will be a pleasure to hand over to my distinguished colleagues for brief opening remarks. And we have many. We have Jesus Hernandez, Director of European Accessibility Resource Center, AccessibilEU. And again, you are for me the core of combining accessibility with design, because you are very much into architecture as well. Immaculada Plensalia Porero, who is the Senior Expert of Disability of the Director General Justice at the European Commission, and who speaks fluent Dutch, which is great. So to make it accessible for the Dutch, we can also conduct the full conversation in Dutch, but I'm not sure if that works. Then we have my friend Maria Abascal, who is Director General of the Spanish Banking Federation and Chair of the Executive Committee of the European Banking Federation. And then we have Lars Bosselman of the European Blind Union Central Office, who has done a lot to make it more accessible for the visually impaired. So I will first give every one of you the opportunity for brief opening remarks, and then it's my pleasure to announce Commissioner Albuquerque for a keynote speech. So Jesus, if I may give you the floor first and give us a few opening remarks on how you see this day and the ongoing dialogue.
Thank you so much, Bing. I'm going to start saying thank you very much to all the attendees in this event. We have around 1,000 registration, and this show the interest of this event and the interest on this topic. Last Saturday, the European Accessibility Act came into force, and now all the banking services must to be accessible. For that, it's important all the banking services develop the criteria of accessibility in all the areas of the services. I would like to say thank you very much also to the European Banking Federation. This is a very strong collaboration between our organization, Accessible EU, European Banking Federation, and with the collaboration with the EDF, European Disability Forum, and with AGE, the platform of all people, but also with the European Blind Union, because we usually organize events taking into account the interests and the necessities of the people with disabilities. Last year, we organized an event talking about accessibility on emergency, and the representative of people with disability was deaf people and hard of hearing people, because they have a lot of problem with emergencies. And now in the banking, maybe the old people and the blind people is the person with disability we have the most problems. But we have to work with all the stakeholders, banking, the users, the public administrations, the professionals developing all the technical aspects, the webs, apps, ATMs. So we have to work with all the stakeholders. And I would like to explain a little bit about what is AccessibleEU. AccessibleEU is an initiative of the European Commission. We started work on AccessibleEU at the end of 2022. We have only 2 years and a half, and the objective, the goals of AccessibleEU is to help the different stakeholders to implement, to adopt the accessibility, the different accessibility laws in Europe. We are in a knowledge hub. AccessibleEU is a knowledge hub. We are collecting different publication level references and good practices around Europe. In our platform, we have more than 600 documents. So maybe now AccessibleEU is the biggest library on accessibility. But one of the most important activity that we are developing is training the expert, training the professionals, awareness to all the stakeholders, and connecting people, connecting stakeholders through networking events. So for that, we organize every year around 88 events. And these workshops is one of these events. And we do always in collaboration with other partners. So for us, it's important this collaboration with the European Banking Federation, with the European Blind Union, and of course, the European Commission is the most important part in the AccessibleEU, because it's the responsible of this center. I don't want to extend more. I would like to pass the floor to the mother of AccessibleEU, Inmaculada Placencia. She is the senior expert on disability.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jesus. It's really for those kind words. In the 28th of June, so this Saturday, was for me really a day of celebration. We started working on this initiative to have legislation on accessibility formally in 2010, but the preparatory years have been really many before. So it's really an honor to be here today celebrating the application of the Accessibility Act with such a distinguished audience. in an area that it is so important. Consumer banking is part of the daily lives of persons, and of course also of persons with disabilities. It's really an honor for me to be here with our Commissioner Albuquerque and with the representatives from the industry. In all our work in preparing the Accessibility Act, we have really partnered with the stakeholders, with persons with disabilities, older persons, but also the industry. It is there where the implementation is going to happen. We prepare the field by having EU legislations that then are transposed into national law, but it is really the actors, the professionals in the field, the one that at the end implement accessibility. The European Accessibility Act is a horizontal piece of legislation that contains requirements for several products and services, one of them being consumer banking services. There, we worked very closely with our colleagues on DigiFISMA to make sure that the instrument was fit for purpose, that it used the language of the banking sector, because we didn't want to reinvent the wheel. We wanted to make it easy to have accessibility. Now, accessibility, I was very happy by the introduction saying a positive word about accessibility, because indeed accessibility is about flexibility, flexibility of the service, flexibility of the product. It's about personalization, allowing individuals to choose how they want to interface. It's about robustness, in the sense that you can have the services that you are getting online in your computer, in your device, in your screen reader. And it allows really for localization, to have your own choices when using those products and services. In concrete, in the area of consumer banking services, we have requirements for that are functional in order to give flexibility also for the implementation and allow for innovation and avoid being a barrier for development, requiring the service, the information about the service to be accessible, and the compliance with certain accessibility requirements. One key requirement is also that products used in the provision of those services are to be made accessible. Today we have ATMs, but we are doing a transition towards mobile apps, and more we are getting all our interfacing through the products that require also identification, security, and so forth. And that compatibility is really very, very important. At the end, when you look to the directive, in summary, it requires that products and services are usable and their functions. It provides modes of operation in which a person who is blind or visually impaired, hard of hearing or deaf, with limited reach, with dexterity issues, with cognitive abilities, be able, and so forth, be able to use the devices. So I'm sure that when you are preparing for compliance with the Act, you will have the users, the consumers in mind. And this section of this sector of consumers would represent between 20 and 25% of the European population. I will dare even to ask you to go beyond the Act and make sure that you really prevent barriers in new products and new services for the benefits of the European consumers. Just my last word to thank AccessibleEU. As I said at the beginning, implementing EU accessibility legislation is in the hands of the professionals, and professionals need to be trained. They need to be competent. They need to know what is accessibility. And we are working in different fronts. On one hand, developing standards, technical standards that contain a way of implementing those functional requirements, but also creating capacity, building a community of practice. And to that end, AccessibleEU has been doing a great job. And the event of today is part of those efforts to make sure that we have a good dialogue between professionals and consumers and legislators to ensure accessibility in the EU. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Inma. Before pass the floor to Maria Bascal, I would like to remind the day after tomorrow, Thursday, we organize a big event. We are going to analyze all the sectors that the European Accessibility Act impact in the industry. So to all of the attendees today who doesn't register for the event the day after tomorrow on Thursday, I encourage to register in this event because it will be amazing for us in this event we are organizing today. Now, Maria Bascal, the chair of the executive committee of the European Banking Federation. Thank you very much, Maria, for coming. I know you have a lot of problem with the trip, so thank you so much for your effort.
Thank you very much, Jesus. Dear Commissioner Albuquerque, distinguished guests, dear colleagues, experts, and ladies and gentlemen, good morning, everyone, and welcome to this first conference on how to improve accessibility in banking services. It's a real pleasure to be here in Brussels for this first company, the first that we co-organize within the European Banking Federation. Today, this event brings together really policymakers, expert on accessibility, representatives from disability community, representatives from banks, and really it's a great opportunity to reflect on an effort, our concrete progress, and also the challenges we still have ahead of us, because we know that we are doing progress, but of course, a lot remains to be done. I think that the timely couldn't be better for this conference because, as Jesus mentioned, the European Accessibility Act came into effect in June 2025. The goal is to establish that accessibility is both a legal and an ethical standard for many services and products in the banking sector, among many other sectors. And ultimately, this regulation wants to ensure that environments, both physical and digital, are inclusive, safe, and reliable for everyone. And I would say that for the banking sector, accessibility is an add-on. I mean, it's a fundamental part, as also Bim was saying, and Immaculada. I mean, through accessibility, we are contributing to better serve our clients, but also to empower our citizens and to foster economic participation in all type of activities. So really, for us, it's also excellence in the service and it's also innovation. And as a sector, we are fully aware of our responsibility that we need to provide services that meets everyone needs on that. The good news is that we are not starting from scratch. I can tell you that banks have devoted a lot of efforts over the past year to really meet with this Accessibility Act, both at banks, individual banks, and also associations. And I think that there are already major progress. I would like to mention a few of them. For instance, banks have worked very hard to provide full accessible online banking platform and also mobile apps because they are designed with to work seamlessly with screen readers, with assistive technologies, so to make it easy to use. Also on physical branches, they have worked to ensure there is step-free access, or they have simplified the menus on ATMs or install hearing loops, or more in general, to eliminate architectural barriers. An additional element that Jesus mentioned is the focus on designing training programs for staff. So banks want to ensure that banks employees have the right knowledge and adequate skill to serve and to provide this personalized service to people with diverse needs. And finally, we also have tailored customer support channels with dedicated phone lines that can, well, take the phones and have these personalized services that many times is needed. So, well, with that, I mean, with all this progress, what I want to say is that banks are working not only to meet the regulatory obligation, but because we are convinced that accessibility is excellence in the service, is innovation, and is also the right thing to do. Well, today we have the opportunity to listen to those that are making it possible. So it's great to learn today about concrete best practices, innovative solution, and those best practices, and also to learn because, as we were discussing before, I mean, this is a journey, so we always need to keep working on that. And well, I hope you have a great program today. I hope we can learn from each other. It's key that, I mean, this for us, this event represents an opportunity to show the banking sector willingness to engage, to listen, and to act. And I think that, well, dialogue is of utmost importance to make progress. So I wish you a very productive meeting today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maria. Maria addressed the importance of the training. I would like to say in these 2 years, AccessibleEU trained more than 47,000 professionals. And I would like to remind, we have an online course on accessibility to the ICT. So I encourage all of you, you want to learn more and you need training on accessibility, on technology, I encourage you enroll in this course. Now with the European Blind Union, as I said before, we do this or our activity in cooperation, in collaboration with the users, with the DPOs, and with the industry. And this event we have organized in collaboration with the European Blind Union and with the H platform. So we have here the Executive Director of the European Blind Union, Lars Bosselman. The floor is yours.
Thank you. I hope the mic works. Yes, dear Commissioner, co-panelists, guests, people, of course, in the audience, both in the room, but also online, hopefully many out there as well. Good morning, and also, like previous speakers, a very warm welcome on my behalf, on behalf of the European Blind Union, which is an umbrella organization bringing together 42 national organizations of blind and partially sighted people. So the number of 42 already indicates that this scope, our scope, goes beyond the actual EU member state coverage. So I would like to say, first of all, a word, of course, of thank you to those who've been partnering with us in putting the event together under the umbrella of AccessibleEU, already mentioned, the European Banking Federation and the H platform. And we also strongly believe that this kind of dialogue coming from different perspectives, bringing them together in one program is essential in making progress. I would like also to say that the topic of access to banking services, financial services, and also in the past with a specific focus on payment terminals, has been high on our own agenda, EBU's agenda, for quite some time. And especially in the area of payment terminals, we've been working a lot, including in the context of the foreseeable and now behind us, which is great, as a landmark achievement, entry into force of the Accessibility Act. We've been developing many recommendations, a set of recommendations for accessible of payment terminals. And I'm not going to present them because I'm supposed to do opening remarks and not a presentation of our recommendations, but I'm sure those will come also later during the course of the day in some of the panel discussions. Now, access to financial services, payments, and transactions, and there are and others. This is obviously high on our agenda, just simply due to the importance. There's not probably hardly any action of life that we can imagine that doesn't somehow involve a transaction, a payment, or similar services. So that's stating the obvious. I think it's also high on our agenda for many years because, of course, there are still remaining challenges. And the nature of the challenges changes over time. I'll just take a few moments to go a bit back not in history, but a few years though. In the blindness movement in particular, working with money, let's put it in simply ways, has been a struggle for decades. And we're coming actually from the background where everything was paper-based. And by definition, paper-based in the financial sector meant I, as a blind user myself, need to ask for help by a sighted person, full stop. I know it from many members. The Constitution says that all our board members are blind or partially sighted people who are elected. And the blind and partially sighted who are elected has often one exception recognized by our own constitutions often, which is the treasurer's position. That probably tells us something about how unfeasible the financial work and duties were for decades. Now, the positive news, of course, is this has already been changing and continues to change more positively over the last years. And I'm sure much more is to come, and it's going to be better and better. I mentioned the changing nature of challenges. I'll just list 3 that I still see in the sort of modern world now, being more in the digital world, that I would identify are there. There are probably more, but those, I think, also in the interest of time, are quite relevant ones. The first is the increased spread and appearance of touchscreens without often any alternative. I don't think there's any blind person who is traveling who has not met the situation where in a taxi, he or she was supposed to pay, had a totally inaccessible touchscreen, and had to give the secret code of the banking card to the taxi driver. I mean, this is not only a deeply frustrating and disempowering moment, which it is, but it's also a security issue. Second, so that's one thing I think that is clearly there. Those are already on the market. So this is a reality already today. So there's something we have to also do about that. The second challenge that I would like quickly to mention is there is a lot of sometimes talk about, yeah, the processes are more or less accessible. They're 90% accessible or whatever. Well, if they're not 100% accessible, actually, mostly that means they are not accessible. And I'll give you an example. Very often, especially in online applications, online banking and thereof, everything is accessible, with one exception, often, the submit or the validation button. Yeah, then the whole thing is not accessible if I cannot actually submit what I've been filling in so nicely. So that is also something to look into, really, its full accessibility. Otherwise, 90%, technically this may exist, but for a user, this means nothing. If I still have to ask for help and someone can read all the things I filled in before, then because of the final button not being accessible, well, then the whole thing is actually not helpful. And the last thing to say also, I think we need to look at the fragmentation of solutions. There is a multitude of very positive and laudable solutions out there, often at the pilot stage, and that's very important to test things. But of course, in the solutions in the way forward, we also have to look at the scale of solutions that we are discussing. So it's not a very good solution, I guess, to have in all different cafes, shops, or whatever, very different solutions all the time, where every time you change shops, country, towns, whatever, you have to actually have a separate app or new service that you need to master. And this is, last point, if we address this. This is not only good for blind and partially sighted people and people with disabilities, broadly speaking. I think working at scale and solutions that somehow are a bit uniform or standardized without being necessarily always unified altogether, but at least have similar patterns. This is also benefiting the general population, for whom also the multiplication of apps for every single thing and service start probably to reach its limits. So all of this, I'm sure, and much more will come out throughout the day, which I'm very much looking forward to the discussions to learn much more about the existing solutions, and there are many, and that's the positive news. So I'm looking forward to the day, and thank you for your attention.
Already listening to the opening remarks, I am inspired, and notably also by your story, Lars, because my favorite aunt was blind from birth and lived till almost 99 years old. So I had her for a long time. And I also noted that we have come a long way, because when I was a small child and walked with her to the grocery store, this was more of an obstacle course for visually impaired. It was really horrible. At the same time, when I was a small child and you had banking buildings and you would ask me to draw a banking building, no idea why I would do that because it's boring, but okay. If you would have asked me at 5-year-old, I would have drawn a huge kind of cubicle-like thing with small windows and notably big stairs and difficult heavy doors. So absolutely not accessible. And if you look back, and if I look back over the life of my aunt, I saw that many things became easier, mostly in the physical world, and then we invent digitalization. Great. I know what my aunt would have said if she knew that all of us had a horizon of no more than 20 centimeters because we're all glued to our phone. She would regret it. But now that we have digitalization, and indeed the points that were made, we have screens. And screens inevitably make it very difficult to access if they are not pre-designed to be accessible. And that brings our discussion on one step further. If you listen to the opening remarks, you already realize how important it is that we have this dialogue in the pre-design phase. I said it earlier as well. And also to catch the right balance, because if everything is based on screens, we also need to catch the right balance between accessible and sensitive to fraud. I remember fondly a discussion that I have with the Dutch head of Viziris on accessibility of ATMs and where to have the balance between actually being able to feel and see the keypad and makes it, on the other hand, impossible for fraudsters to look over your shoulder and then copy the PIN code. And it is this kind of conversation and this kind of inherent design that will make the world more inclusive and more accessible. And that is why I'm so happy to introduce Commissioner Albuquerque, because indeed, for financial services, you're an inspiration for us on this, not only through the Accessibility Act, but also indeed, if you take it, in my view, as early part of financial education, you realize how finance works, how access to finance works, and also then you realize that what seems so logical from a designer's point of view is not so logical in the real world. You are also indeed in charge of all the files on finance. And indeed, we can talk for hours about that, but that's not what we're going today, as long as your files will be accessible. Commissioner, I give you the floor.